Good evening. I will now call this meeting of the Lawrence Alliance for Education to order. I ask that we please first all stand and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Thank you. So just a reminder, and then we do have to say this at every meeting, we are holding this meeting here in person at the Partham School. However, per the governor's executive order in March of this year, we are live streaming the meeting for public access, and we're also having some board members participate remotely. We have two board members today participating remotely, Noemi Custodio-Laura and Pat Mariano. So they are participating via the Zoom. So the first item on the agenda is public comment, and I have one person signed up for public comment, Cheryl Travers.
Good evening, LAE board members and Superintendent Paris. My name is Cheryl Travers, and I'm a preschool teacher at the John Breen School, and I'm also the financial secretary of the Lawrence Teachers Union. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the high needs teachers, pre-KK, who will have students in front of us shortly, and we're just really concerned about the real possibility of the cross-contamination. We have a lot of kids that go to home providers, daycares, Head Start programs, and they all, a lot of them get the transportation into our individual schools, and they come from, all different parts of the city, and then they come into us, so we've got a mixture of the kids, and then they go back into these home providers, these daycares, these Head Start programs, and then it happens all over again in the PM, so it's just really concerning about the fact that cross-contamination is more than likely going to happen, and being in the red zone, it's and being so, high, it's just really concerning for a lot of the teachers. So I just wanted to bring that forth to the LAE board meeting. We need to keep, safety first. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, as a reminder, we also do have a email address, info@lawrenceallianceforeducation.org, where public comment can be submitted. And ahead of the meetings, I believe there's a 12 p.m. cutoff before the meeting day, and then those emails get forwarded to all board members and are part of the public record. So I'm going to hand it over to the superintendent in a second. There are 3 items under her report, but just want to note that we're going to move up the LAE Education Plan MSBA update first on the agenda. We have, several visitors and participants here that we want to make sure can deliver the presentation, and then we'll get them on their way. So we'll start with that. But other than that, I'll hand it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. Great, so we're joined by Atlantic Construction, and they're going to be sharing with us an update of the LAE project. We're also joined by the principal of the LAE, Ethel Cruz, and she will give us highlights of the educational plan. So I'm going to turn this over to Atlantic, and then we'll have the conversation, and we'll have Principal Cruz chime in.
Suresh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, LA board members and Superintendent Paris. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Suresh Bhatia. I'm the president and the OPM for the Atlantic Construction and Management Inc. With us are the team members from the design office of Mount Vernon Group, and I will let them introduce themselves.
I am William Peters, project manager for the project.
Here I am.
Dennis, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, this is Dennis Daly, Mount Vernon Group Architects, design principal. I'm working on the design and planning of the building.
Yeah.
My name's Al Cuevas. I'm the project architect at Mount Vernon Group Architects.
My name is Susan Taylor. I'm the interior designer at Mount Vernon Group Architects.
And she's the most important person. So though she's being introduced in the last, but she's the most important person. So Susan, do you want to
We're-
share your screen with us, please?
Sure. We're all a team here. We all work together.
Thank you, Susan.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
So if I can move to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have three quick items that we would like to go through with the board today. Well, our agenda is to review and approve the district's education plan, review and approve the new 1,000 students K through 8 school that we, as to move it to the next level for the design, and the vote to submit the PSR report or the preferred schematic report to the MSBA. If you could move to the next slide, please. So, Ethel, would you like to talk a little bit about the educational plan, or Superintendent Paris, one of you, if you could, talk about how we all work with the school district to develop the educational plan, and the highlights are listed over here.
Thank you, Suresh. We're going to have Principal Ethel Krupp give us the highlights.
As we started to think about the creation of the new LAE school, we were thinking about all the needs of all of our students. And one of the highlights of this school is that even though it is a large building, within that large building, there are going to be clusters of neighborhoods. Especially thinking about the younger students when they enter into the school, it's a very big building, but then they would go to their small cluster where they would feel safe. They will be with their peers. It would be more developmentally appropriate for them to have that space. At the same time, those clusters will provide space for interventionists, for specialists, and for students to have extra space if needed, if there is need for teachers to work with small groups and teachers with to work with students one-on-one. So the opportunity came to provide students with these neighborhoods, thinking about the whole age group. We also considered the spaces that are available for enrichment opportunities and for the arts and for the sciences. So we're taking into consideration all the needs of the students and creating the plan for a building that will be servicing all.
Thank you, Ethel. Moving forward, I would like to have Bill, if you could introduce us to the existing site conditions of the school.
You will. Actually, we've been into the existing building. This is a photo of the LAE. We've gone in with our engineers to look at all the building systems, the mechanical, plumbing, electrical. We've actually had a civil engineer out there to start a survey. We've had geotechnical engineers out there to do borings and test pits. And we've also had geoenvironmental personnel out there to collect soil samples so we can get all that information on the borings, the soils, footings, and things of that sort.
So having looked at all of those elements, we're going to be preparing this document called the Preferred Schematic Report, which will include all this information. It'll help us understand the cost associated with the development of this particular site. But cursory review, if you could go to the next slide, some of the things that we found that are impacting this site, as you can see in red, these are roughly the bound lines of the actual school property. For orientation reasons, the Spigot River is at the bottom right-hand corner. Irvine Street is the avenue is the main road in front of the school. It's bordered by Bruce Street, Trinity, and Avon. As you can see, it's nestled in a very residential community. And the main, there's obviously drop-off and pickups in that area. So the new school will have impacts in the sense that it's going to be a larger school. If you can move to the next slide, there's zoning requirements that we will be needing to address from a planning standpoint. So we'll be seeking relief for side lot, front lot, and probably height considerations. One of the things that we will need to do off-site is to find swing space for the students while the construction is taking place. We also will require construction laydown area off-site and around the building. So those are the things that we will be working to develop a plan for to make sure that the school is cost effective as much as possible. Next slide, please. As you can see, there's limited parking. There is some parking on the site. We will continue having that issue moving forward on the new site, along with the boundaries around the building. Next slide, please. We will also, in the new layout, you will find that, when we'll talk about this later on in the presentation, there's opportunities in this new design that we're looking at to have play space sort of in a controlled environment in courtyards, also on the roof in a controlled environment, secure type of space. Next slide, please. And one of the things that obviously is endemic of this particular area is the Spigot River. There is a 100-year floodplain, and it's going to, it impacts the site. So as part of our design, we will be needing to address concerns and storage capacities that we will have to address, whether it be on site or in the adjacent properties. But the sense is right now, I think, based upon our initial cursory review, we could probably deal with that on site without having to go off site to deal with the storage capacity. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Dennis so he can talk a little bit about the building and how that intersects with the educational program that Ethel discussed a minute ago.
Sure. Thanks, Al. Quick description of the building. Based on what Al has already shared, we're pretty much filling the site. And so this is forcing a building that's going to have to go up 4 stories plus a penthouse. That brings in the issue of the rooftop area. So I'll take you quickly through the floors before Susan goes further into detail about them. But the first floor will contain most of the public areas as a community school, as well as the administrative areas and the kindergarten. Some parking off-site will be, on-site will be provided also at this level. So the building will go over. You can see that on the upper right-hand corner. The second floor will feature the first and second grades, as well as some support spaces. The third floor will feature the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, again with support spaces and the gymnasium. And the 4th floor will be the self-contained middle school, featuring the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You'll see that the gymnasium is placed in such a way that it's easy access for the younger kids and the older kids all to get to it. And then the roof has a penthouse, which has your adaptive physical education space, OTPT, and can be used for other physical education uses as well as a middle school and middle school art room. You're located in such a way, and if we go to the next slide, you're located in such a way that, I'm sorry, that we can use the outside, and we'll talk about that further after Susan talks about the floor plans. I apologize.
Okay, so we'll take a deeper look at each of these floors. On the first floor, we have a lot of, like Dennis said, a lot of the public-facing attributes to the building. You can see they're been color-coded at this point. The dark burgundy color indicates a lot of the administration spaces. So we have a few administration suites within the building. Right at the front entry off to the right, we have an administration suite that will have both the welcome centers for the elementary school and the middle school. So once you enter into those, we're trying to keep the two schools, keep that theme that they are co-located schools, even though they are in one building. So once you enter the building, there will be two distinct welcome centers for each of the two schools, although they will share some amenities such as like a mail room or a copy center. Within that space, our co-leaders will be located for both the middle school and the elementary school. Also on this level, in the burgundy color, we will have the health suite with close proximity to the street for ambulatory services. There will be another suite that you see over here in blue. This is a special education suite where we have our evaluation team facilitators and school psychologists, as well as conference rooms for parent meetings. And so that is right off the lobby. So we're trying to keep that concentrated on this first floor so that we keep the public on the first floor and within, it's a large building, so we want to keep them close to the entrance. Also on this level, we have a kindergarten neighborhood. So the kindergarten will have its own administration suite and an entrance off Bruce Street off to the left. You can see that in the upper left-hand part of the floor plan. The 4 kindergartens are in close proximity to one another, and they're all surrounding an open area, so teachers can pull out kindergarten students and have some one-on-one interaction, as Ethel had mentioned earlier. Also within this area, we have a parent room. So we have again, we have some of that community-focused amenities in the building, and we're trying to keep them on the first floor. We're trying to pull in a lot of community aspect onto this level. Additionally, just moving around the floor plan, we have our service area for both the custodial and the kitchen. That is again off Bruce Street. And then we have the cafetorium and the stage rounding out the rest of this floor plan. So those are also community spaces that we're trying to keep on the first floor. Moving on to the second floor, this is where the academic classrooms and the special classrooms begin for both schools. On the second floor, we have 2 neighborhoods in the upper portion of the floor. We bisected the floor plan with a corridor that runs right to left on your screen. The general classrooms and general classroom neighborhoods are above that, and then we have specialist spaces below that. You'll see that the floor plan will be identical on the upper floors in that upper portion of the screen. And this helps us in a way with efficient space planning to keep our costs down. But it also helps students become familiar with the school as they matriculate through the grades. So on the upper, so if you look at the upper portion of the plan, there are 2 neighborhoods. There's a first grade neighborhood and a second grade neighborhood. They are identical. They're just mirror images of one another. There are 5 general classrooms that all open up onto a general open area, just like we saw down in the kindergarten. And there is also a special education self-contained classroom with its own toilet within this mix. So all of these classrooms are opening up onto an open area, which fosters a community aspect for each of the classrooms. This space is available for pull-out spaces, but it's also available for collaborative learning between different classrooms. Within these neighborhoods, there's also toilets. So we're trying to keep the kids within this neighborhood of the building. So it creates this a cluster of a smaller learning community that they become familiar with, and that they generally stay in that portion of the building for most of the day, unless they go to specials. So you'll see that happening for all of the grades. On the lower portion of the plan, we have some of those specialist spaces. We have 2 music rooms here in the orange, and then over to the right, we have in this zone over here, we have STEAM spaces and art spaces, which open up onto an open area, which is part of our media center. Now, our media center is shown in green, and what we're determined in part of the visioning process is that a distributed learning system for the media center is what we're proposing here. So what we've done is we've taken a number of that square footage, and instead of concentrating it in one portion of the building, we're dispersing it throughout the entire building. And this helps with literacy, bringing it really to the students instead of taking the students to the literacy area. So we're trying to combine that with all of the with the learning that is done throughout the day instead of being a separate piece. So we're trying to really integrate that through the curriculum, but also spatially as well. Rounding out this floor, we have a social emotional suite with a de-escalation room and a dedicated toilet that is over in this area here. And then we have some scattered administration throughout the building, throughout the rest of the floor plan. We have an open play area here for the first and second grades. So this is an area that is actually, it will be an outdoor space. It is not an indoor space. So there's a courtyard in here. This, in addition to allowing us to have some play space for this age group, it allows us to get natural light into a number of interior windows. Okay, let's move up to the third floor. So the third floor you see is very similar to the second floor in the classroom neighborhoods. They're organized very much the same, all on the upper portion of this corridor. On the lower portion of the corridor, we've added another grade. And so there is another neighborhood down here that has the same amenities as the other two that are on the upper portion. So again, there's 5 classrooms, a special education classroom, an open space, some of that distributed learning, and also dedicated multi-user toilets for the students. So again, this neighborhood has a lot of the amenities that they would use frequently in this area. Rounding out this floor, we have the gymnasium, as well as its support spaces with storage and locker rooms. And again, there's some in the dark burgundy, you can see there's additional administration space scattered throughout here. On the fourth floor is really where we begin to separate the elementary school from the middle school. So the fourth floor is really dedicated for the middle school. We have, again, 3 neighborhoods for grades 6, 7, and 8 up on this floor. Additionally, we have science rooms for 7 and 8 and a technology room for 7 and 8. And then again, we have some scattered administration space throughout, rounding out the rest of the floor plan. Now on the 4th floor, I will turn that back over to you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Susan. This is where I left off before, talking about the art and adaptive PE on the roof. This large rooftop player is going to allow us to have both active and passive recreational activities up here on the roof. And we spent a long time in our visioning sessions talking about how a roof might be used, because we were aware that we'd have quite a large building on the site and that roof might be something that could be used. There was a lot of enthusiasm about it. And we see by having art up here in adaptive PE, those are sort of bonuses in that the adaptive PE can also use some of the outdoor play area. And you'll see in our 3-dimensional model, its portion is covered, for shade and everything, for using it in any kind of weather. The art room can also open up to it. Now, when we go to the next slide, you'll see that we've just shown an area with a lot of different things on it. This is the part that we're going to do a lot of exploration. We know some of the things that we want to do is have some of the standard things that the kids have in, Foursquare and hopscotch and that kind of stuff. But there's also great opportunity for raised planters, for planting beds, and for quiet areas. And the entire building roof around all of its edges as well as around the courtyard area has high fences for safety. So it's a very traditional sort of urban school in that sense, but it also has a lot of exciting opportunities. Some of these photographs that we'll show you in the next slide exhibit the multitude of things that can be done on a roof. You can have planting on it. You can have shaded areas that are built. And there is a multitude of types of play equipment that's built specifically for the use on the roof. So as you can see in the next slide, that they're specially weighted and designed so they can be put on a roof. They won't blow away, but you can minimize the amount of roof penetrations that you have to make. And you can also see how the tall fences around the outside, protect the children, but also provide, don't obscure the view. There's also a possibility of really exploiting these fences to do something interesting with them, graphically perhaps, and make it more exciting. This could be a tremendously exciting rooftop play area and a nice safe area for the kids away from the traffic. And also because of the evolution of the types of pavers and so forth that are used now in occupied roofs, snow removal and other things is not a problem. These types of technologies have been addressed. So with that, we will move on to Bill.
Dennis, I'll take this for now. So right now, we're currently at a very high level cost estimate. We're looking at, for the 1,000 student school K through 8, we're looking at 173,000 square foot building roughly at $445 a square foot, which is about a $77 million school for construction costs. What that includes is all the site work, all the abatement, hazmat, building demolition, and it includes escalation to the midpoint of construction. Just to give you a sort of a cost comparison, if we were to do the same school for an ad reno, it would be roughly around the same at about 171,000. Cost per square foot would be a little less, and it would be roughly a $74 million school. The problem with the ad reno is that your educational program wouldn't be as robust as the school. It'll be a little smaller. It would the construction time would be extended probably for another year. And that's just a high level right now because we're still trying to do the research in terms of the structural ramifications to even trying to build or renovate and fully gutting the existing school. So that's just a high level estimate just to give you a sense of we can get a brand new school with the right size program for about this, a little more than what an addition renovation would be for this current school without all the drawbacks. Next slide.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, the whole team from Mount Vernon Group. So just to give you a quick update to where we are, we started in early January of this year with the feasibility, and we got stuck with a little bit with the COVID, which you all have been stuck with the COVID, got a little bit, lost about a few months, I would say, in the whole process, but we did make a submission to the MSBA, the PDP submission was made, and we got their comments back and responded to their comments, and we've been working on the preferred schematic report, which is a PSR, and we're making our October 7th update to the LAE board right now. We'd like to do our selection of the preferred schematic report review with the building committee on October 13th, and plan to submit that to the MSBA on October 27th. So then we have a potential of two facility assessment subcommittee meetings, either which the MSBA decides could be November 18th or December 2nd, depending on how many projects they have in the pipeline the next few months. So to go to the MSBA board for a PSR approval of December 16th. So that's where we stand right now. And with that, I think the formal presentation ends. So we'd like to, these are the few steps, which is the submission on October 27th, the subcommittee for the MSBA on November 18th and December 2nd, and the board approval 16th. So I think we'll open you up for questions, and then we can come back to say what we need to, when we need to move forward after answering any questions that the board members have.
Next slide.
And this is what this kind of a rendering of what we think the school would look like from, if you're standing at the Spigot River and across the street, you're looking at the school.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the really detailed and thorough update. I am going to turn it over to board members for questions, and just given our remote or sort of partial remote nature, I will go ahead and just call on board members, and I'll start with Jess.
Well, this is making me sad that my son will have graduated from the LAE by the time this is all built. It's great, and I've, been at some of the design sessions with other parents for this, so it's nice to see a lot of that feedback being taken into account, but also, I think, a nice job of dealing with the constraints of, making an efficient building design that works. I guess I have a couple of small questions here and there. One is, I do know from occasionally not riding my bike to pick my son up that parking can be at a premium and can be an issue there. And so I'm just wondering, since this design and the new construction part basically eats up all of the on-site parking that's already existed, is that replaced by the parking that's being created within the building? Or is there less parking within the building than there has been outside of the building, like not counting street parking, or more, or about the same? That's just one question I have.
Al, would you like to respond?
I could answer that. Presently, it looks like we're not going to be able to replicate the exact number of spaces you have on site, but again, we're very early on in the design, and how we design the circulation will have some impact on how the parking works. But this is unfortunately the nature of a small urban site, and I understand your concern. We will try to maximize that parking, make that work. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I mean, to the extent that this might encourage more people not to use cars, I'm fine with it, but I know that that will be a concern because there's a substantial portion of the teacher population that comes from out of town currently and is going to be driving to the site. So I don't know, were there any plans to look nearby in the area if there are any, I mean, I guess street parking is not super utilized to the west of that, so there is some possibility there, but it is pretty built out all around there. So I don't know if there's any opportunity to create some additional parking that's even a block away or so on. That's beyond the scope of what you guys are working on?
that's
Well,
correct.
yeah, to some degree, what we do need to do is, we are in the process, as part of this design, is looking at the traffic flows. I mean, it's a little difficult right now to address the traffic flow, given that we're in the COVID situation. In the ideal situation, we would like to see, the current school operate and see how that flows. I understand all the parking considerations, and look to see how we can better address it. As you can see in this particular image, we are doing some level of street calming in terms of on the traffic side. But I think, your question is a valid question. How can we maximize the space, and, can we think out of the box to see if we can, maybe work with the city to address some of those concerns, whether it be, on that main road with the street calming, widening it out so that you can allow for additional parking. So I think it's something that, we should definitely investigate and see what opportunities we can create, if that's possible.
Okay, great. Could you just talk a little bit more about, like, I don't think I understood or got, the snow removal on the roof. I'm just curious about it, just because it seems like if it's open like that and has a lot of flat surfaces, it's not like people, and then a fence all around it, you can't just shovel the snow off the roof onto the street below. So how does that work in that area? Do
That's-
you just designate parts of the rooftop for snow
That's-
piles?
That's exactly right. The biggest issue has always been damage to the roof with snow removal, and those sorts of problems have been overcome. But not unlike a parking lot, it has to be designed in such a way that there are areas where snow can be stored. The fact that we're looking at having green areas on the roof, planting beds right on the roof, as well as raised beds, those planting beds right on the roof could serve, for instance, as snow storage areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys are on top of this, but just thinking about the additional load and then the, water penetration, I think would be important, because we'd hate to have us have a gorgeous brand-new school and then, lots of water coming through.
Rule one, don't let it leak.
Right. So, just one other question, and you guys are probably not the best answer. In fact, this might be even a question for Pat Mariano. I'm just thinking about, you showed us the floodplain elevation, and I can't remember if it was 2007 or 2008. So Ethel, I don't think you were at the LAE at that point when we had the big floods in Lawrence, and particularly along that area where the spigot is channelized and kind of forced out of its original course. There was pretty extreme flooding in that area of kind of like central Lawrence and going over into the Arlington along the spigot. And so I just think it would be worth looking at what the actual flood levels were in that flood. It was an extreme case, but as climate change, continues to dog us, I think that would be worth looking into and thinking about what kind of mitigation you might need to do structurally on that first floor closest to the river there. Just on the assumption that there might be more extreme climate events.
So just to speak to that just for a moment, we have been in discussions with the district and also Public Works. They've indicated during those floods exactly where that water rose up to. Coincidentally, it coincides with the FEMA mapping that's currently out there. The graphic that we showed is approximately what happened.
Okay.
In terms of how we address it with the building, it's a phenomenal question. We're looking at one, obviously, to place the finished floor of the first floor higher than that, and also to try to create a way of providing the storage capacity above and beyond what we need to on site, so that if there is additional flooding, we can manage that a little better. So yes, it's a great question.
Yeah,
and,
no, that's really
are
good to hear, because I do think on that part closer to the spigot, there is going to need to be some extra stormwater management that maybe assumes a worse flood event than we had currently. I think those are all my questions for now. I am really excited. I hope the rooftop vision can come true, because I do think the kids need outdoor space to play in, and I'm super excited that there's going to be a gymnasium and also a stage space, because I think those have been two things that have been really lacking in the LAE to date, and I think teachers and parents and students would all agree on that, so it's awesome to see them in there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Noemi?
Yes, hi. I want to echo what Jess was saying. You did a really impressive work, and I like all the details that you mentioned. I only have one question, and I don't know if you mentioned it, but I didn't see it in the map. I didn't see any elevators. Does the building have any elevators?
Yes,
Yeah.
there are elevators that, I didn't point them out. I'm sorry about that. They're in the main lobby, and they go all the way up to the roofs, and there'll be two of them. There'll be two
Susan,
of them.
can you go back to that slide just to show her, please?
Sure. Yeah, let me just scroll through quickly. I'll just bring you. So the two of them are right when you walk in, straight ahead, right here. These two things that say EL.
And you go just for each floor, just go up each floor?
Yep. So right here again. And all the way up to the
Oh,
roof.
okay, I see it.
EL, yep, EL.
Okay. Yeah, that was my only question. Actually, no, did you go one floor below? Yeah. Okay. Will you have the open to below? Is that gonna be? Is that gonna be like an open atrium? Are you foreseeing that they will have chairs or? I'm just trying to figure out the space. If it's just an open space and then the school will eventually be developed into something else,
No.
or we already have a little bit of structure.
So basically, it's a courtyard. So on this level, the second floor.
Yeah, but it's a play area.
Yeah, so it's a play area. So it's actually open to the open air. There's no roof over it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that gives us let's see if I can show you the yeah. So this right here.
Mhm.
So that is an open area. It goes all the way up to the roof. So that allows us to bring in some natural light into into a very compact building.
Very nice. Okay. Yes, I was trying to figure out how would that look like. Yes.
Yeah.
So then, actually, I do have another question. So that means that that hall goes all the way to the first floor, or only goes to the third floor?
Goes to the second floor.
Second floor.
Only the
Goes
second
to the
floor.
second floor. Yeah.
So it will be 6. So you're gonna have. I mean, when the kids look at that from the second floor, is it gonna be glass? Like how that's gonna look like?
Yeah.
Glass.
Glass.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Great.
That's my other question.
It's a space where there's windows from classrooms into corridors, so
Mhm.
you'll be able to get natural light, natural ventilation into that space. So it'll feel like you're part of the school. It won't be just walls. It'll be very open feeling.
So there are going to be windows on that side.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It'll be yes. So it'll look very much like an exterior wall.
Okay.
With windows. Yep.
Okay. Oh, that's very nice.
A lot of glass.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Naomi. Pat?
Oh my God, thank you. This is like a dream come true as a past principal of the LAE School to see the possibility of what could happen there is, to me, I can't wait to see it. I need to compliment the gentleman, the team. I'm sorry, Sue. The team from the Mount Vernon group, as well as Shiraz and his group from Atlantic Construction. They literally took the vision of the community, the LAE community, and turned it into reality. And I'm just so very, very impressed with it. The LAE has a reputation of being a community school, and the design is lending itself to being a community building where parents can be engaged and really participate in their child's education. I look forward to a very, very beautiful building and great opportunities for the kids. So I'd like to thank you all for this design, and I think it's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Very much.
Great, thank you. And one of the challenges of going last, which I will be doing now, is that a lot of my questions were already asked, which is great. But my main question, was about the floodplain. I mean, obviously that grabbed my attention. And Noemi, actually, I did wonder about, was it glass on the third floor and fourth floor? And, I assume there'll be some sort of protective structuring on the roof around that, if it's open for kids.
Yes.
So, I think my questions are more maybe for the school staff and for the district, which I don't think are related to the design, but just as like we anticipate change, So like I notice on the first floor we're assuming like 4 kindergarten classrooms, right, for the space, and I know that the numbers increase for, or the sections or grades increase for first grade, second grade, and just wondering, like, you know, maybe if you could talk a little bit about, like, what do the numbers look like right now, specifically with like kindergarten and you know, and as we anticipate and, you know, changes, and part of it could be increasing students, like, just curious how that's gone into the equation of how you all have thought about the design in the space, you know, so far. So I don't know, maybe I'll start with the superintendent.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let Ethel give us the exact numbers or approximate numbers right now.
So right now, we have 4 homerooms for each grade level, first through 5th grade. And it fluctuates between total of 80 to 100 students per grade level. Sometimes more than 100 per grade level. But we definitely fluctuate within that range.
And so the goal is for us to be able to accommodate 1,000 students in that space. And I think just a reminder that in addition to the Oliver Partnership Building, we also advocated strongly for the increase in the seats, and the MSBA granted that with the understanding that our enrollment continues to increase, and we want to make sure that we accommodate our increasing enrollment in the city. It also affords us to be mindful about class size. And as Ethel said, in a section of 3, right, Ethel? Sorry, I think that's 3 or 4 classrooms. 4.
4 classrooms.
Sure, that could be challenging, as you can imagine, with our younger learners.
Great, no, I appreciate that, and I think even looking at, so that's helpful, because as I look at the number of sections, like 5 for first grade, second grade, I mean, and the others, I mean, they're it's sort of anticipating already some ability to be flexible, so I appreciate that.
Mentora, could I ask a follow-up to your question?
Sure.
So in doing this, are we envisioning adding net new capacity to the system, but we're not consolidating schools into this school? Like, we're not thinking of closing other schools?
Correct.
Okay.
There's no plan to close any schools. Actually, we need every single space, again, being mindful of class size.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thanks for that, it's actually really important. Yeah, I mean, overall, it looks great. I don't want to repeat what everyone said. I mean, I have like little questions that I think I can always follow up with the district on. But overall, I mean, I just really appreciate this, and I guess the only thing I'd want to make sure we're paying attention to is the timeline slide. So it looks like it's the 3rd from last. So if I'm just making sure, like today, again, I know we're getting the update, and the next milestone's the 13th, and I know the facility committee's involved, you know, quite strongly with that. But looking at this target date, December 16th, and once we get approved, because that's the plan here, what happens after that?
Right. Dennis, you want to walk us through the next, actually, you have the MSBA website. Let me just bring that up if I can.
I can generalize
Get it
really
to the
quick.
website.
So once we go to the FAS meeting, they'll give us some comments back, and if they respond to those comments sufficiently to their satisfaction, they will recommend to approve the particular preferred schematic option which we're presenting to you today to the board of the directors at MSBA. Approve to go into schematic design, which at that point you focus specifically on developing this plan even further in more detail with elevations, massing studies, and really get into the nitty-gritty of the building, get the best possible understanding of the systems that will be going into it, and getting a real price, target price for this particular project. So that's really the next step after this particular step.
Great, and how long does that typically, or do you anticipate that taking from, again, let's say they approve it on the 16th, to being able to come back either to this board, or I don't know sort of what the order is, with that much more detailed plan.
I'll leave that for Suresh. He has the schedule and it's plugged into his schedule. That one.
So basically, it's a very good question. So once the MSBA give us the PSR, the target date, we then move into the schematic design phase, which will take us to the end of almost next year, middle of next year. And then we have one more year of that. After that will be the design development. So we're looking at middle of June of 2021, we're finishing the schematic design and then going out for ready for bid in the summer of 2022. So that's when the construction would start. And again, we have to look in the meantime, what are the swing spaces available? How's Oliver working out? What's their schedule? How they're moving around? And if that's, we want to keep it to a minimal disruption for the district as well as for the students. They will be moving and you don't want to be looking for spaces, two different places. So the question is, what works and what doesn't work? We need to work that out with the district.
Got it. So we would be anticipating construction and therefore swing space needed for the 2022-23 school year, if I understood that timeline correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Board members, any other questions?
I did have a couple of others I just thought of. I'm just assuming, like, looking at the budget that was presented, is this kind of in line with what we assumed that it would cost? And we're cool with this, we have the city's contribution lined up and everything?
And these are just estimates at this time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. And actually, I think that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Atlantic Construction and Management. Thank you so much, Mount Vernon Group, and thank you, Ethel.
Thank you all. And if you could, have your permission to, approve or at least to have the report reviewed and moved forward for submission to the MSBA after the school building committee, reviews it, the final report. So if you could, get your permission to do that, your blessing, that would be great.
Ventura?
Go ahead, Pat.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the submission report, the preferred schematic report to the MSBA as presented by the Atlantic Construction Company and the Mount Vernon Group this evening.
Is there a second?
Sorry, I'll second that.
Great. Again, any discussion? Great, so because we are some members remote, I will do a roll call vote. So Jess,
Yes.
Noemi,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, so the motion passes. So, yeah, you can move on to the next step. So really appreciate it. Again, thank you for your work on this, and just really excited to see the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Great, Superintendent.
Great, thank you. So next, we'd like to do an update. While my colleague calls up the PowerPoint, I wanted to circle back with you all on our last conversation about attendance and make sure that we clear up the conversation that we had last time. So next slide, please. A bit of context here with our attendance in the next slide. So when we last met, we shared attendance data, there's some confusion, so I'm hoping that I'm able to clear some of that up tonight. Daily attendance measures the group of students that is present on any given day. And as you all know, we do have a chronic absenteeism as a perennial issue in our district. We spoke at length last year about that challenge. We worked in collaboration with various stakeholders group, and we did several things that you all supported, including adjusting the calendar last year to support and really make this issue something that we're all involved in. You know, we're really proud of the efforts that our teachers, administrators, and school staff are doing every day to ensure, encourage, and support our students attending and being engaged in school. So what we've done since is we have here a bit of a background in terms of what happened last year with attendance and a review of what we have up to date here. You'll note that there's a slight difference here in the numbers that we presented last week, and that is due to the fact that we have ever-changing guidance with remote school attendance and taking that back updates. And so that is reflected here in those numbers. We still feel really good about that. As you can see, we have a little bit over 88% at any given day, and this continues to improve. In the next slide, we wanted to share with you the report and the work that we've done since we last met. So all the students who were absent the first 8 days of schools. And then we asked our schools to complete the tracker during the week of 9/28. So here's what we learned. This is the slide where we show what, sure.
Can we go,
Yep.
just go back
Yep.
one, because I think this is really important to
Yep.
clarify. So what we're saying is that there are not like 1,200 students, as we said, as we were tossing around last time, who have been absent all of the time. There are 255 students who have so far been absent for every day of school.
So 255 was in the first 8 days of school
Right, but we're absent for all of those first 8 days
that
of
have
school.
not logged on once in the
In that-
first day of school.
okay.
255 students.
But what the rest of the gap is reflecting students who are sporadically attending.
The other numbers is attendance per day on every single day.
Right,
So
so
it
it could be,
averages-
so someone could be, a child could have gone like 3 days that week, but been present the other 2 days, and a different child could have gone, and it would still be around an 88% number because, okay.
That's right, so the percentage doesn't reflect, it only reflects on that single day attendance of that single day. And the number that I think was confusing last time was sort of the remainder of the attendance day being correlated to kids missing, which
Right.
does not correlate to that.
Okay. So just to be absolutely clear, though, what we're saying is that on any given day, we do have roughly 1,200 kids who are not in school, or who have not attended all of school, right? Because they have to attend the majority of periods, the majority of classes to be marked present.
What we're saying is that attendance is recorded each day, and we do have students some students who do not attend every single day, but that does not mean they have not logged on for the entire period. The amount of students who did not log on was 255 in that period of time. And yes, we
Right,
do
but-
have students who still, right, in any
Yeah.
given day will not show up.
Okay. But on any if our attendance rate is maxing out at 88% on any given day, then on any given day, it's not the same students, and it's not that these students are completely disengaged, but we do have, let's say, over 1,000 students who are not attending or are not attending for the full day.
Sure, the remainder of that percentage, those students have not attended in that day, yes.
Okay, all right, that's just what I wanted to clarify, to just
Yes.
understand what the problem is. And so then the other thing that we know now is that these 255 families are the families that we haven't been able to get in touch with at all, but a lot of the other ones we have been able to get in touch with some of these, and you're going to explain some of
Yes,
the reasons.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
all right, gotcha.
yes.
But we are in touch with these other students who might be sporadically attending. We are also in touch with a lot of
Absolutely,
those families.
absolutely.
Okay, That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So, and I appreciate that I did skip over the very important number of 255. So what I wanted to share is how we keep track and how do we know where students are and what the reasons are. So when we asked schools to select general reasons, here are those reasons. We spoke about a few of them last time. And in the next slide, you'll see the breakdown of that.
So what does it mean when it says student has been present since this data was collected? Because that seems to contradict.
Sure, so
Absence.
I'll go with every single one of them. So
Okay.
students in the process of being withdrawn, again, that number that we had shared, the 255, and when we shared attendance last time, we still have a number of students who were in the process of being withdrawn. As an example, they might have been at the VOC, and they were attending another school or another district, but still also enrolled with us and not attending. Students present since the data was collected, because that was the first week and a half of the discussion and the data collection, they had already now reported to school. So that was 60 of those back a week and a half ago. Now, this is an interesting one. We do have families and students, I would say, that are refusing the remote learning model, and there are many reasons why they might be refusing at this time. So we're working closely with those families and those students. Tech issues, they vary. A lot of them are things like their Chromebook was damaged, and so they were in the process of getting a new one. Their connectivity was lagging, so there's a few technical issues that we continue to experience. The one that says unable to locate, what that means is that the number does not, there's nobody at the other end, or is a new number, and the address has also changed. So for those students, we do home visits. I'll talk about that in a moment a bit more. And then we have other. I'll explain and give you reasons also in my next slide about that. Of course, we have students who are working during school hours, students who are out of the country, and then the daycare situation. So here in the next slide, we'll give you a bit more context of reasons. Here's some examples. And these are verbatim notes from schools when we ask them to share with us what other means. The list is quite extensive of why students might have not been present the first week and a half of school, and still the 255, but in particular, the 22 students who we still haven't made contact with. In the next slide, I wanted to share what supports we have in place for these families. As I had mentioned, we do have home visits that we make, and so those are still in the process. We continue to be tenacious about, making these home visits and figuring out what and where our students are. We have a few anecdotal stories that our schools have shared with us, and I'm confident that within the next few weeks, those remaining students will be identified and will be either attending, or we will know why the student remains enrolled and still has not engaged in remote learning. Any questions about that piece?
Yeah, let me start, thanks, Superintendent. Let me start, go reverse order. So Pat, we'll start with you if you have any questions on this first part of the report.
Okay, I guess my confusion is with, I understand the attendance and I understand finding the kids that have not logged in, which were called no-shows in my day. But I think I'm more interested in the participation rate and how the students are engaged to log on and to stay on the length of the day. I think that's where my questions are going to be as far as participation. So I'll pass it on.
Great.
Yes, I would just say that we are correlating attendance when the student is present as participation. The particulars of what's happening in each class, I'm happy to come back and give you a full report on that, because I think that would be a good thing for us to see, and it would be even more interesting if we had, testimonials from kids and teachers who are the best at this, but I'm happy to do that. But just the correlation is, if you are present, we understand that you are participating and engaged in learning.
Great, thank you, and I would second that maybe for,
As a follow-up.
oh, go ahead, Pat.
Sorry. Superintendent, could you repeat that again? You're saying if they log on at the beginning of the day, then they're considered as participating for the length of the day, except at the high school where there's individual courses.
Right, and middle school. Correct.
Middle school, I'm sorry. All right, so again, if an elementary student logs on first thing in the morning and decides an hour into the day not to participate and to log off, is that child counted as present, or how is that child counted?
Sure, that child is counted present, and then the teacher and administrators would follow up if the student did not maintain the synchronous, asynchronous schedule for the day. So as a reminder, they also have synchronous and asynchronous, especially for our younger learners. But
Okay.
yes, they would be counted as present. The teacher then would take attendance in their class, and if they're logged off and expected to join later that day, the teacher would be also making a note of that.
How many times in the elementary, where we're doing remote, does the teacher take attendance in the course of a day?
The teacher's aware of all her kids at any given moment in each class, so it could be several times during the day.
All right, because at some point, an elementary student may have another teacher for a specific subject.
Correct.
So would that teacher take attendance?
Yes, they would.
Okay. All right. No further questions.
It's like I rest your honor. Thanks, Pat. And I just want to underscore, Pat, and the superintendent also offered is, just at an upcoming meeting, in addition to like attendance, talking about the actual, the teaching and learning, and maybe a little more insight into what's happening in the classrooms, or, in the sessions, in the courses with the students. So we'd love to take you up on that, Superintendent. Noemi?
Actually, my question was, this one is a little bit more the extrapolating part, because I was thinking about some of the questions that Pat had, and I was wondering if the attendance will be taken in the same way as is taken in the high school, then the no-show or non-participation will look more like what you see in the high school, because the kids are only counted once. So based on what the superintendent says, the students are counted several times a day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That was my question. That was my question. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Jess? Although I know you had some questions in, but you have others.
Can we just go back to the slide that compares last year to this year?
Yeah, right
Before
that.
this? Yeah, okay. So I don't know that this question is going to be answerable. just want to raise the issue, right? I think, as the superintendent pointed out, we already, had a problem with chronic absenteeism that the district has been focusing a lot of attention on, both reworking policies, putting new practices into place, really trying to engage students who are not engaging regularly. And, if it's instructive to have last year's numbers so that we're not all going off the rails like some of us, myself included, might have done a little bit last week around how many students are not showing up. However, I do want to point out that attendance is like a 5% differential when we were already at a concerning level is still concerning. And one of the things that this points out to me, and I think this has been happening in lower income districts and in communities and districts of color across the country, is that we will find numbers similar to this, and it underscores to me the importance of returning to in-person learning as a real racial and social justice issue for our community and our district. I think, though, we have a really tricky path to walk right now because we have a teaching force that has legitimate concerns around safety, in terms of returning to that model, but we have a huge educational need that we have to meet that I continue to think will be best met by in-person learning. And I know that there has been evidence on both sides of this equation from around the country, right? There are districts who have gone back to in-person learning and, rates have gone up and there's been transmission and so on. And then there are districts who have been able to handle it successfully. I think we even have some local models because we have local youth programs that have been doing in-person programming with very strict protocols in place and, seen no outbreaks and no cases of transmission, and they're caring for the same children that LPS would be hosting. And it is a matter of having, to some extent, good protocols and just practicing that repeatedly in place. But I just think we're in a tricky situation and a tricky negotiation around that, and I am, wondering what your thoughts are around that. Sorry to perhaps open a can of worms, but.
We share your sentiment here. We continue to advocate for the needs of our students and what families have also indicated is, something that they desire. And we're sensitive to infection rates data. We believe that the plan we have in place now is the right one. We will make adjustments as necessary, but more importantly, we need the support of you all and the community to continue to implement the plan that we have drafted.
Do you think, it would be helpful to me, I think, to see, as we proceed, one of the things I'm wondering is if we could look at some districts that have successfully returned to in-person learning, and if there are lessons that we can draw from them or practices that they've instituted that we're also putting into place. Because I'm assuming that some of those districts who've done it successfully might be more resourced than us, but some of them might not be. And so I would like to understand how we're building off some other models that have done this successfully, because I know that teachers have concern about facilities, about when the level of physical contact that might be required with some special needs students, all kinds of things. And, I think we have to weigh all of this, but there's such an overriding social justice issue around this educational delivery in my mind that I think we've got to get to some place of agreement as teachers, parents, administrators, and a community around this.
Yeah, we work in close collaboration with the Merrimack Valley other districts because they're our neighbors, and so they have shared similar demographics, similar rates, and I think being in good communication with them. As you all remember, I'm also part of several other groups, the Urban Superintendent Group, the New Superintendent Group, and other colleagues, and we're all constantly talking and sharing best practices. We're pretty much on the same line as to reopening for hybrid, so we're all learning at the same time, and that's sort of the conversation that's really present right now. It's not that anyone has successfully done anything because we've all taken similar approaches, which is a face-in approach.
Okay. All right, as you get more information about this and what other districts are doing, I feel like it would be, I would defer to my other board members, but I'll personally say that it would be a useful thing to me to, have access to some of those findings so that we can, I would rather have some data than fear and speculation to work from. Thanks.
I have questions, but Jess, I just think your point is so important, and I just want to underscore it or second it or whatever it is, highlight it. It's really hard, as I drive around the state and I sort of look around outdoors at private schools that have all this space and they have all their tents up, and I look at those students being educated every day, and I recognize just the disproportionate impact that this, not only COVID, but I think the response and the ability to get kids back into school is exacerbating inequity based on race, based on class, based on so many factors. And I agree with you that while we have to make sure that we're leading with health considerations, we're also just taking a serious, or just putting at the forefront, like, the goal of getting kids back, And again, safely, looking, that has to be in that way. We can't do it any other way unless we really focus on how to do it safely. But I feel like, especially in our community, just the impact of this is tremendous. And I think we're looking at the attendance rates, but I think there's data in a variety of ways, about how just the impact of this. So I just want to underscore your point, and I do think it's tremendously important for us as a board, as a community. One of the questions I have, and again, it wasn't a part of the presentation, and we didn't ask you to but I'm very curious on these sites that are open in Lawrence, run by either nonprofits or other groups that are serving students. Like, I'd love to get a better sense of how many students are currently being supported in those programs. Similar to Jess, what, if anything, are we learning about either infection or, how they're just sort of structured and mitigating that? I just think that's really, really important for us as a board to really know, like, how many of our students are actually being served in these programs. So I don't know how we get that data, Superintendent. We can work together on that, maybe with the mayor, but I really would like to get a handle on that for this board. I guess some of the questions I have around attendance, I'm wondering if, and this is just looking at the first 8 days, and even here though, are we seeing patterns by, level, like school level, specific grades? Like, I'm just curious, like, drilling a little deeper into the data, just like, what are we seeing?
Sure, I don't have the specific with me, but I do know that our high schools continue to be challenged by remote learning and their sleeping habits and everything else, the teenagers, so yes.
And it also sounds like, if I'm hearing right, that sort of the definition of being present for the high school and middle school, it requires you to attend all your classes. So if you're missing one, then you're not getting marked present, so that could have an impact, more on high school and middle school students than being marked absent. So it would be helpful to see that data broken down, just as I know this is a topic that you're presenting on regularly. And then I'm just curious on, this is the first 8 days, which is really important, and we're sort of identifying the students the 255 who we, couldn't account for, and then obviously you all have been doing a lot of work to account for those students. Just where are we now? Like, what's attendance look like? I guess I'm curious about, recent trends. Are we still sort of hovering in the 87, 88? Is it improving? Is it decreasing? Like, I'd just love to get a handle on, or not even a handle, just a sense from you, both now and then maybe just in ongoing presentations. It'd be helpful to have a sort of a current, understanding as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to bring you up-to-date data in terms of attendance. We do believe it's trending in the right direction. And again, all the efforts, kudos to our teachers and administrators and families, by the way. I think they're doing an exceptional job at managing this remote environment. Many of our families have taken days off. Many of our families have secured childcare where they can be able to have their student in front of these classes remotely.
And then I'd be curious on enrollment. Like, I know, again, this time of year, like, I know as like those 73 were being in the process of being withdrawn. I also remember there were a lot of students who were still, being enrolled. And so I just love to get a handle on just where are we enrollment-wise now, compared to past years. I don't know if you have that currently, but if not, I'd love to be able to get that from you.
Yep, happy to bring that as well.
Okay, those are my questions for now. I know there's more to the presentation, so why don't we continue and then we'll do another round of questions.
I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure a lot of people watching know this already, and I think the mayor's office has done a great job about getting this out, but there are some resources available from the city to provide scholarships for childcare to parents who need them in order to be able to work. And so for any parents who are watching this and don't know about that, please check that out. It's a limited resource. I think there's about $400,000 citywide, but it's definitely something that people should try and take advantage of to help defray those costs to be able to balance the childcare and the working.
So next, I wanted to share the up-to-date data of remote work request. Here's the summary. So to date, we've approved 480 requests, of which 114 have not been. We have some pending requests, and this is because we're still negotiating an MOU with assistant principals, exempt staff, in particular central office. And then we do have some requests that are pending information. So that makes it a total of 641 requests to date.
Why don't we just go ahead and finish the presentation? 'Cause I think it's only another slide, and then we can open it up for questions.
Great. And then lastly, we wanted to share an update of the meal distribution so far. So you will see here, I'm not sure that's translating very well. Maybe you can click on them all. I think those are, yeah, thank you. So here's the summary of the meal distribution since June and as of last week. You can see that we've had an increase since we started. I think we also mentioned that we had expanded meal styles, so added additional one and expanded the hours of meal distribution from 11 to 1 to now 11 to 2.
Great, and I believe that's your report. So let me go back through with board members. I'll just do the same order. Pat, do you have additional questions?
I'll pass right now.
Noemi?
Sorry, I also pass right now.
Jess?
So I guess just a statement. I don't want to get into micromanaging this. I feel that we do continue to get outreach from teachers that have been denied remote work requests that, from the information they're presenting, although the requests might not meet the letter of the MOU terms or the criteria set up by LPS, that a generous interpretation of that criteria would allow that some of those folks to operate safely and effectively remotely. And so, I don't want this to continue to be a horrible flashpoint here, but I just want to reiterate how important I think it is to take a generous approach to granting the remote work requests, and to consider, all the family dynamics that are going on. For instance, if somebody is caring for elderly parents, even if the parents are not directly living with them, but they're having daily contact with them, it feels like the right thing to do to be able to grant something like that. And I don't want to micromanage, but I feel compelled to clearly state that continues to be a concern for several of us on the board, and I would just like to see us exercise generosity of spirit in managing that.
I'll say that I think that HR is doing an excellent job at looking at the MOU and looking at every single request. I think the next piece of this is, our strong desire to bring kids back in person. And so we take that into account. We are going to be sending emails to the high needs teachers this week, and expect that they will be in person with our students in a couple of weeks, so that continues to be something that we're also mindful of.
And would you say that I've been under the impression that we're going to try and do our absolute best to match the in-person teaching force with the teachers who are most willing to do that, as long as it meets the educational and academic needs of the students who need to be taught.
Absolutely, and still there will be teachers who are currently working and were granted remote and will still be asked to come back in order to be able to satisfy our strong desire to have students in person.
Do you have further
I don't have a productive solution to offer, so I don't have further comment right now, but I'd like this to be an open agenda item as we go forward, because I think we need to think harder about this.
I think it goes to me. Yeah, I mean, again, I just want to underscore, and I've said this at different meetings, and just want to say it again, that I know the MOU lists out the criteria that will be considered, and first of all, just, thank you to the HR team that I know has been, reviewing over 600, requests, and oftentimes needing to get follow-up information, and, so there's a lot of work on that team. I just want to thank that team publicly for everything that they have done and are continuing to do. I think right now, we're looking at sort of the next milestone in the reopening plan is getting students, high-need students back, and that's sort of what we're working towards. We're still, I think, waiting to get information from the building doctors, and I know that's an important piece of information that we're waiting to look at. And, I guess what I would say is that, as I've said publicly, I think making sure that we have the teachers we need when we need them, especially for the next phase of, when we're ready, the in-person for the high need students. And I think similar to Jess, and I've said this before, is that we have a process in place. I also, too, say err on the side of, being as just liberal as possible with, how we're reviewing and granting. Again, I think the priority is going to be the group of staff that are working with our high-need students, because we need those folks to come back. And I would say, however, the district has also discretion to, if there are people who have been given a request for remote work, and it is one of those criterias that we feel should, continue to allow them to work remotely, yeah, we have to think about that as well. So I appreciate that the district is going to look at, all of those cases again, and again, I agree with the priority of we have to get high-need students back in a safe way, but as I've said before, obviously the district has discretion, to take a look at it, take a look at the cases, and especially if there are cases that are covered by the MOU and the criteria that, quite frankly, even though the teacher, works in an area that, we're bringing kids back, we have to look at the health as well and sort of the reasons why they're being granted the telework, and we might have to figure out another solution. Again, and I say that all with the goal underscoring here. I know the next milestone is getting high-need students back, and you heard my comments earlier that, we need to get as many students back as soon as possible in a safe way, because this really is having, I think, a disproportionate effect on a community like Lawrence and other communities, similar communities across the Commonwealth. And we need our teachers, we need our staff, and I know they're working extremely hard right now. They have before this pandemic, they're continuing to do it, and so we will also be calling on them to, when we bring our students back, to continue to do the sort of work that they're doing now. So we really appreciate them, and again, just underscoring that the district has been in a position, as we all have, but talking about the district, to manage what is an extremely complex problem with many sides, and and I've appreciated, Superintendent, though, your focus on making sure you're representing the families as well and the students, and making sure that they're at the forefront of everything that we're doing here. So at this point, I have no further questions. Again, I'll maybe just last go around. We do have one other item under the superintendent's report, so. But I'll go back around with you, Pat, if there are any further questions.
No,
I'm sorry?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Noemi?
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay, Jess?
I guess I just did have one other question. Do we have a sense at present of how many of those high-need students, how many of those families are actually going to send their kids back in person?
Sure, as of this morning, we had about 370 students.
So that's far short of the 2,000 that it could be,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So that seems like we should be able to institute distancing and safety measures and so on with some level of effectiveness at this point. Although that might go up in the next week or two.
Sure, that might change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess sorry, Jess, you done?
Yeah.
The final question I would just ask is, if there's an update on the facilities report, just sort of where are we with that process?
Yes, so as I had mentioned last time, CBI has conducted the first study of the 7 schools in phase 1, and they are very busy right now conducting the rest of the district. We're going to be meeting with CBI later this week, to review their initial report, and then we can share that with you all in the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the third item.
Can I just say
please.
one thing about that? I just want to point out that we have also gotten a bunch of emails from teachers who are teaching in the classroom, and it does appear that climate control is an issue and things are getting colder, and I know we have a lot of older buildings, so I will just be interested once the CBI report comes through and just kind of digging into that a little bit and making sure that as we have teachers in the classroom, that they're like in a comfortable, workable environment and not having to like wear their parkas to work, so.
Great. And the third item, just Superintendent, I can say just a quick word. So this is the summative goals update from the superintendent. And just as a reminder to the board, I presented on this last week. At this meeting, we're hearing the superintendent's goals, and we've gotten the report from her. So we can ask questions, obviously. And then I'm going to be sending all of you, or I think it's actually in the link of our materials. There's the form that I'm going to be asking all of you to complete over the next week. I'm going to give you a week to do it. And it's your individual completion of the evaluation form. And then what I do is I take all of those, compile them into one document that we're going to review 2 weeks from tonight during our meeting. So we'll review that, discuss it, and then ultimately we'll vote on that final document that I sort of synthesize or, just sort of put together. So just as a reminder of the process, today is just to get an update from the superintendent on her summative sort of reflection of her goals, and then we'll have a chance to do our evaluation in the next 2 weeks. Superintendent?
Great, thank you. So I'm thinking of sharing, brief commentary on reviewing the goal and then my updated, and then any questions that you all may have. So I'll start with the first goal that was set, which was to revitalize an open architecture vision through the renewal of the turnaround plan and the creation of the earned autonomy framework. Last year, we engaged in both these processes and had a robust stakeholder engagement for both of them. Specifically, the turnaround plan, we engaged families and teachers. And then, of course, we halted that engagement with the closing. We had intended to pick that back up when we opened, and in consultation with my colleagues at DESE and the chair, we have decided that drafting the turnaround plan with what the information that we have, because this is a renewal, we will be drafting the plan and then sharing it with you all for additional feedback and other stakeholder groups so they can also share feedback. And with respect to the Earn Autonomy Framework, we also engaged in that process last year and worked really closely with our administrators, our principals, and central office leaders, and engaging in that process and designed the framework, which you all also supported and approved last year. At this time, we have an RFP that is out, and we will hopefully complete the next stages of that later this spring, if not next year. The next goal was to develop a community-owned process for the high school redesign. And as I had mentioned, we successfully hired a new head of school. That was a robust also process that yielded an excellent candidate. He's doing a great job at the high school. We also are the recipients of the Barr Foundation grant, which has helped us identify and started the process of getting the portrait of a graduate. So up to date means right now we have also been able to, let's see, where are we here? So we're in close communication with them and plan to reconvene the steering committee later this fall. The next goal was the expansion and continuum of academic and social, emotional, mental health supports for at-risk students. That is quite extensive work. As you all know, we redesigned the Office of Student Supports, and under that umbrella, many new changes appeared. We have made significant progress in this area as well. More recently, we added additional BCBAs to each school, And that department is working really hard to ensure that the reopening phase 1 also includes these students and all of those supports are in place. The next goal was maintaining effective district governance model, including positive and transparent board and superintendent relationships. I continue to work closely with board chair and have worked closely with Desi during the transition of our board chair. I will continue to engage board members individually and collectively in concerns, ideas, and how we can get better at presenting information, at having respectful and thoughtful conversations and discussions, and more importantly, at meeting our goals as a district. Lastly, the goal was to provide equitable, standards-aligned curricula and instruction to all of our students. And that work has been ongoing this year and this year. As an example, we have had communities of practice, Standards Institute, and many other trainings that teachers have participated in. This is going to be ongoing. We paid a lot of attention to this goal in the Student Opportunity Act, and of course, you know that also COVID halted that funding, and so we're still hoping, and it's pending, but the work continues. I wanted to add that all of this work is the product and supported by my colleagues as central office leaders, so it's under the leadership of Kenan Foley, it's under the leadership of Maricel Gores, under the leadership of Mary Toomey, under the leadership of Denise Snyder. Our supports include many, many more, Maciel and Audanis, who has now recently joined us. So all of these efforts, Maria Cruz, so all of these, Ortiz, sorry, have been possible because my team has spearheaded many of these initiatives, and I'm thankful for their support. Questions?
So I'll go general questions. I'll start maybe with Jess. I went the other way around. Jess?
I do have a question about the turnaround plan process. Are we still working with Great Schools Partnership? And are we re-engaging a sort of the community engagement process that we had to put off? That was just sort of getting underway when COVID hit?
Sure, I think they did complete that process, and we have, we believe we have the necessary information for the renewal. And so what we're doing next is doing a draft of that, bringing it to you all for feedback as well as different stakeholder groups. So that would be the next part of this process.
Okay, but so we still haven't, because the turnaround subcommittee hasn't met with Great Schools since I don't remember when the last time we met. We did have some conversations post-COVID.
Right.
But we haven't talked to Great Schools all summer.
They did provide a summary, and they shared with us their findings back
Okay.
in the spring, and so that's the information that we're going to pull from.
Okay, I thought we
draft.
had agreed to do some more conversations with parents and students and teachers. Did we not agree to that?
We did. We also did that for both the framework and SOA, and we agreed that being sensitive to COVID and everything else that was happening, that we would use that process, take that information, draft the plan, and then bring it as a draft to then provide additional feedback.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'm nominally the chair of the turnaround subcommittee, so what do I need to do next to help move this process along?
Great. So in December, we're going to provide a draft to you all as a board collectively and to the committee to provide feedback on that draft of the plan.
Okay, and do we need to meet and talk about how we're also going to collect some of that feedback from parents and students, or does Great Schools feel like they are good to go in terms of what else they might need to do there?
Yeah, just to be clear, grade school, the engagement with them has completed.
It's
Yes,
completed,
yes.
okay.
So as a committee and moving forward as a district, we can collaborate to ensure process for feedback and the different stakeholder groups.
Okay, so maybe Pat and Noemi as my fellow committee members, we should just convene as the turnaround subcommittee and just talk about that a little bit, I think would be helpful. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Pat, and I think from just my perspective, I was a board member when this was happening. I'm now the acting chair. Is that, like, again, my perspective is that there was the community engagement process for the turnaround plan, for the earned autonomy, for the SOA. So it seems like we have a lot of feedback already to sort of draft something. But I guess my expectation, I think what I'm hearing is that whatever gets drafted is not only for us, but we then have to get feedback
Yeah.
from the stakeholder groups on the draft itself before we finalize it and vote on it. It's sort of how I'm reading it, if I'm,
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. So it'll be a draft and for feedback from different stakeholder
Okay.
groups.
Good, thank you.
you good, Jess?
Yeah, just my one last comment is I want to make sure that the elected school committee is one of those stakeholder groups that we get feedback from. And Ventura, I'm going to continue to nag you at some point about getting the issue of joint meetings and around, and our engagement with the elected school committee, and maybe streamlining, hopefully in a way that will be helpful to the district and the superintendent, streamlining some of the necessary communication that has to be done twice now in that way. I think we need to talk about that
Yep,
eventually.
duly noted. Thanks. Okay, great. Noemi?
I don't have any questions to this point. There were, some of my questions were similar to what Jess asked, so thank you.
Pat?
Yes, Superintendent, goal 2, it says create an advisory seminar for all students grade 9 to 12 that meets daily for 30 minutes to build community through restorative circles, etc. Is that currently happening through the remote learning?
It is, and that's also happening across the district, but in particular for the high school.
Okay, written notes on these. A lot of the information on goal number 3, the social emotional piece, positions were mentioned and trainings. Was a lot of that contingent on the SOA fund?
We do have still things that are pending on SOA. We have used other funding that came via CARES Act to add the additional BCBAs as an example.
Okay. I think it would make it easier for the board, or at least for me anyway. The spreadsheet that was sent to us with the 3 columns, the goal, the progress towards the key actions, and then the self-assessment. I think it would be clearer if we had some kind of a not so much a timeline, if we could have like completed or ongoing and a date that something was completed. I think it would add a little bit more clarity to this document. And when it comes time to filling out the documents that Ventura wants us to do, it might assist us in doing it. Do you understand what I'm asking for?
So if I heard you correctly, you would like times for when things were completed.
Yeah, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Well, actually, the one I just spoke of, the advisory groups, something like that could be begun on such and such a date, ongoing. Hold on. This is goal number 3. Promoted assignment of an RTI lead for every school as school-based liaison to professional learning and team-based RTI meetings. Did it happen at every school? Is there somebody, when did that happen? Or is it ongoing? I'm not sure. I think we need some clarity with this.
Okay,
And then the last one, the fifth goal, the different trainings for teachers, maybe if it was a little bit more defined as to when they happened or if they're scheduled in the future. Am I confusing you?
no, no, so what I'm hearing you say is that it would be helpful if there was a mention of a timeline, whether it was completed, whether it was ongoing. And some of these, of course, have dates that were just done, right? And then some absolutely are ongoing. So you would like to know the difference and make that clear.
Yeah, just a little bit more specific information about the key actions. I think that's what I'm looking for.
Okay,
And that's all I have right now.
Thanks, Pat. And I guess what I would say related to that is if, like, and I appreciate the specific examples, Pat. If they're like very, of these specific ones, I would say ask those, just because, again, I'm trying to be mindful of, I feel like I have a lot of good information here from the June updates and then from the end of year, and just want to make sure, again, if there are specific areas where you need a little more information, Pat, I'd say that's fine, and maybe, I think you've named those tonight. I do want to remind the board that, the forms are in the link, and I'm going to follow up with each one of you just to make sure if you have questions, we can talk it through. I'm giving you a week to try to turn this around, and it should be plenty of time, but I know we're all busy, so that's why, I want to make sure I follow up and answer any questions. Because ultimately, you have the superintendent's update, we have the mid-year, this end-of-year update, but ultimately, we have to then, individually complete the evaluation based on, the evidence that the superintendent has presented, both in her reports and then just, throughout the course of the year, like in the meetings that we've been a part of and things like that. So that work will be on us over the next week. And so I look forward to checking in with all of you. And, again, the link to the form is in the Dropbox folder, so please take a look at it, and I'll follow up by the end of the week with folks just to see if you have questions. I don't have any other questions at this time. The one I can say in terms of evidence is meeting weekly with the LAE chairperson. We do meet at least weekly, if not more, so I know there's a lot of communication going on there, between myself and the superintendent, which I appreciate. So thank you, Superintendent, just for the update. I know it was a lot today, so thank you. The next item are the minutes, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes if we're ready for that.
I'll move to approve the September 23rd.
23rd, yep.
minutes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. I'll do a roll call vote. Jess?
Yes.
Noemi?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so the minutes are approved. So as a reminder to the board, we meet again in 2 weeks, and we'll do so again here in person for those folks who can do that. And again, if not, the Zoom option is available for board members. So again, just want to reiterate that. And I'll be in touch this week just as we work on our summative evaluation. So the final thing I just want to say is, again, you, superintendent, to your whole team, just thank you. Like, I know this is, again, I'm going to keep saying this, but this is unprecedented. You all are dealing with, what's already a complex job, it is even more complex. And so just thank you and your team. And again, I highlighted the HR team because I know they're working a lot right now. But your entire team, I know, is working tremendously hard. And I just think our teachers as well, who, again, the entire district staff and everyone just having to work to, in a very unique situation, and ultimately, the goal is to be there for our kids. So just appreciate all the work that everyone's doing, and your leadership right now, Superintendent, is really important, so thank you. Having no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, Jess? Noemi?
yes?
Pat?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so we're now adjourned. Thank you.